Welcome. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Michael McDowd. Can I call you Michael instead of Mike? No, I like Mike, but whatever you want.
Call me whatever you want. Just don't call me late.
That's right, exactly. At each commercial break, we're going to ask a trivia question. Today's trivia theme is miscellaneous trivia. In our next segment, we're actually going to have two guests, Michael, who are two guests.
We have not one, but two. Well, on the screen right now, and we'll introduce him, is a fine gentleman. He hails from, what part of Texas? What part of Texas? Granbury, Texas.
Little town outside of Fort Worth.
You can hear that melodic voice. He was one time the starting quarterback for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and we'll give you all the particulars. But not only that is Patrick one heck of a football player, originally from Erie, Pennsylvania. He has a very interesting company that surrounds the game of football. Our next guest is going to be joining us as Harper LaBel, a former Colorado State Ram tight end and long snapper. Well, Harper is what we like to call a triathlete. He played 11 years in the National Football League. I say that's doing something pretty special. He was definitely a marathoner, and boy, I don't know too many guys who played in the NFL for 11 years.
There we go.
And he's coming on the air right now. I'm giving him a grand entrance, and we're going to talk to Harper and Patrick coming up next.
That's right. Okay, audience, you are listening to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, along with Mike McDowd. And when we come back, we're going to reintroduce Patrick Steenburge and Harper LaBel. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, along with Mike McDowd. Mike, introduce, please, our two guests.
Wow, what a mouthful! And you can call me Michael if you want. Okay, my beautiful soon-to-be bride will calls me that. So, anyways, our guest. Let's get to a pretty important show today. First of all, a gentleman who has mixed feelings this morning, I'm sure. Who was he went to the one of the best universities in South Bend, Indiana. One of two universities there, I believe. I don't believe he went to St. Mary's College. But
No.
Patrick played for the University of Notre Dame Fighting Irish in 1971. He's from Erie, Pennsylvania. He is in Texas right now, coming to us live. And Patrick, good morning to you. And before we say good morning to you, I want to introduce our other guest, who's a really great guy. I've had an opportunity to get to know him a little bit. He hails from the fine state of California, as do I and Edward. And he is a graduate of Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks, California. He's in the Hall of Fame there. He played from there. He went on to have a really nice career for the Colorado State Rams. And then from here, he said, I still have football in my blood. I think I'm going to play in the NFL. So Harper decides to play not 1 year, not 2 years, 11 years in the National Football League. I call that a triathlete as far as NFL players are concerned. You're a marathoner, and it's really great to have both of you guys. Happy New Year to both of you guys. Nice to see you.
Welcome, guys.
Hey, thanks, Michael.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the nice introduction. And Patrick may remember our band used to play the fight song and the march when Notre Dame would come out to California and play the USC Trojans. Instead of shipping out all the students with the trombones and drums and all that, they just used our guys. It was it was like a pep band in relation to Notre Dame's band, but they still would play the fight song. And if Patrick had several touchdowns, then he would have been a very happy man. But it beats Dr. Arthur C. Bartner in the USC Trojan band that would play Conquest after every 3rd and 4. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, so just that's our correlation to the University of Notre Dame. Very small, but we do have a little bit.
That's a good connection. And that dang white horse, the night I was out there, it was muddy, rainy, and that white horse kept running up and down the field. It was not a good night.
Yeah.
Okay, that leads us right into. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I got to say, Harper, I can attest that I've seen your high school band against as Notre Dame goes to the Coliseum to play the Trojans. And that band was always there doing a great job. And people, especially the Notre Dame fans and alumni, really, really appreciated them. But hey, segue to this. And Edward, I know you massive game
let's
last.
get right into, okay, so we're recording the show on Tuesday, the day right after Ohio State and Notre Dame. And I, to be honest with everyone, I hadn't really followed too much of college football, but of course, when it gets to the end, I'm kind of looking at it, and right away you see Notre Dame score, and it's like, okay, this is good. And I was more of a Notre Dame fan anyway, but then I got to say, as soon as they on TV when they showed the front line of the Ohio State, and each guy was at least 6'4", 320, I thought, this is going to be quite a challenge. I mean, when you have guys that big, as all of them on the front line, your quarterback is going to have all day to throw. And sure enough, Ohio State. Patrick, what did you say they scored on the first 5? Or Mike, you said they scored in the first 5.
I think one of you guys could. At first 4 or 5 possessions, they scored, and to me that set the tone. And basically, no offense, game over. I hate to say that it wasn't over, but it was close enough. I mean, the Irish gave it a valiant
because of the turnover. I mean, the game really wasn't that close, right? I think the score was 35-23, but or something like that. But it shouldn't have even been that close. Yeah, it was a tough loss.
We'll give the Notre Dame guy. What's your thoughts, Patrick? I'm sure there's mixed emotions.
Yeah, I mean, it was. First of all, it was a great season for Notre Dame. I don't think anybody expected them to do what they did, especially after that hiccup with the MAC team from Northern Illinois that came in and beat us early on. But actually, I think Coach Freeman and the other coach used that to their advantage. And from that point on, they just developed and got better and better and better as the year wore on. And I think last night we just ran into some probably the best receiving core in college football. I think they've got the best, 4 or 5 receivers in college football, great offensive line. And, we were hindered by injuries, now that they're playing these, the lengthy playoff, really, you got to go deep into your roster. And we had some defensive backs, that weren't starters early on in the year. I think we had 3 starters that were not in the game from early in the year. And when you're playing guys like that, I think in the end they had a few better Jimmies and Joes than we did, but it was a great season. Yeah, disappointing last night, but I'm proud of our boys, and especially I think we've got the right coach now. We've gone through a couple others that didn't fit what I thought should be at Notre Dame, but it's great to see them playing solid football.
Get that new Rockney spirit, all right?
Well. Yeah, it's more about the players than the coaches, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And Harper, what about you? Because, you played at the highest level. You were a fine tight end at Colorado State, and you played the National Football League. And with all the college football experience, because you also see a ton of college football. You are the color man for Georgia State University, I believe. And you see so much football. What were the discrepancies that you saw? What were things that just stood out and said, hey, it's going to be a long night?
Well, I loved the way that the Irish just marched down the field. I didn't realize until after he'd come off the sideline that Riley Leonard had a situation where I think he landed on the ball and it affected his ribs or his stomach or something like that, because I was surprised at how gassed and tired that he looked. He just wasn't able to breathe. And some of that's emotion. Some of that's just the jitters that you have, as Patrick would attest, to any ball game. And I'm going, wait a second, this is a little odd, but no, it was a part of an injury, I guess you could say. No, it wasn't a significant one, but it did hinder him there. But then they couldn't get a first down for the rest of, they took up 10 minutes in the first quarter, but until halftime, and then their first possession in the second half. So I realized, and I think everybody did, that against a team like Ohio State, and I'm going to say this without reservation, but understand, I respect them. I appreciate what they did. I congratulate them. This is not a critical comment, but a critique. It's the best team money could buy. And the game has changed before our very eyes, where there's now a cap that would never have been in place a few years ago. But now you can spend $22 million. And I think Ohio State spent $20 million to get to where they did. And I think that with all the money, and we don't know what the ratings are yet, what the revenue is going to be split up as, but Ohio State is in perfect position, as is, let's say, Texas, maybe Penn State. I don't know. There are going to be 4 or 5 other institutions, Alabama certainly being one, where money will not be an issue. They already have enough of it to bolster their lineup and to be able to put the top guys back in all over again next year, where Indiana may not have that yet, but they're working on it. SMU, other teams that made it in. Boise State, how are they going to compete in the future with their 3-star guys versus the 4- and 5-star guys that Ohio State, Notre Dame, Florida State all seem to get every year? I hope it works to where we manage the game so that it's better rather than it's more limited and it becomes smaller.
Good. Okay, guys. Hey, good stuff. Tell you what, let's go to our first commercial break. We're going to start off with an easy question, get a little bit harder and a little bit harder. Total random questions here. All right. Which Olympics was boycotted by 65 countries? And you have to name all 65. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, call or email Edward at sportsecon101.com. Which Olympics was boycotted by 65 countries? All right, stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back.
That's a new one. I haven't heard that before.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Hey, Mike, next time you got to look at the camera because we have to have 5 seconds of silence. All right, here's our first, there you go. Here's our first trivia question. Which Olympics was boycotted by 65 countries? Anyone?
Yes.
80 Summer Games is my guess.
Exactly. That's right. Remember when Afghanistan was invaded by Russia and Jimmy Carter decided, I don't think we're going to go to the Olympics. And then what happens in 84, Russia does that to us. And so it was kind of a lopsided one.
Well, we hosted the Winter Games, and obviously the USA hockey story
right.
Was thing, but that was back in the era where the Summer and Winter Games were both celebrated in the same year. But yeah, I don't remember Carl Lewis and Edwin Moses. They all had to wait till 84.
Yeah, Mary Lou Retton and was it Mary Lou Retton or
yes?
Yeah, 1984. Right.
Hey,
okay.
Harvey Brooks, Jim Craig, Mike Eruzione, all that great hockey team.
Lake Placid. Which, by the way, that was Herb. I want to say Herb Score, but Brooks. No, that's Herb Brooks, which was played by Goldie Hawn's husband, Kurt Russell.
He was fabulous.
It was actually a good movie. I don't know if you saw that movie. It was good. Miracle on Ice.
Yeah.
Little trivia thing about. Now we'll wait for your. They got hockey players to be actors. They had to skate first. They were guys that were very good athletically, and that made the action portion of that movie a lot more realistic because these guys were actually real. They were players, and they turned them into. It wasn't the greatest acting you're ever going to see, but revealing the story, that was a critical component for that. So one of the little goofy things that I learned about that movie, I absolutely love it. A Miracle is a fantastic family movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I was. I'm more of an actor than a skater. You don't put me on skates. No. All right. Hey, moving on to the NFL for just a minute. So now we're down to the 4 teams: Eagles, Commanders, Bills, Chiefs. I gotta think that this is going to be an American League Super Bowl win. Either the Chiefs or the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl. Is my personal opinion. The Commanders kind of coming out, that their young buck coming out, the quarterback, he's looking pretty good. Any comments, guys?
Well, first of all, the what they did to the Detroit Lions is embarrassing because Edward and I have a local connection to the great Jared Goff. We're big fans of him and went to Marin Catholic High School. And I feel so sorry for him because the Commanders came out and literally played, for lack of a better term, and you guys can correct me, absolute smash mouth, in your face, physical football. As a result, it worked. and Detroit just defensively had no answers. What's your thoughts?
The Chiefs, until the Chiefs get beaten, I'm still going to go with them. I mean, they've proven it a number of times. I think their coach is really good, and Mahomes is pretty magical when it's needed. So I wouldn't mind if somebody else went in there and did it, but we'll see
especially
what
the
happens.
Bills. It's like the 4 losses in a row, and the only one they even had a chance on was the first one, and then Scott Norwood missed the field goal that would have won it for them against the Giants. I'm kind of aging myself a little bit here.
That's all right, Edward. I know those games well.
Listen, I was a huge Tarkenton fan, and I was so upset when Len Dawson beat them in the Super Bowl 4. I think that was. I'm an old guy. What do you think, Harper? You can make any predictions?
You're correct. Yeah, Super Bowl 4 was one of 4, not in a row like the Bills, but the Vikings certainly struggled early on. But for them to make it, that was something else. And I'll be candid. I thought the best team in the tournament was the Baltimore Ravens because they were playing better. They had a little chip on their shoulder. Their defense was drastically improved over the middle of the season. But whatever, Buffalo said, you're not going to beat us in our building. And it's a shame. It takes 10 or 12 degrees, wind chill for some teams to generate their best football. But I agree with Patrick. Is who would place their money on someone other than Patrick Mahomes if the game is on the line and you're down by 5 when there's 1:40 on the clock and you got one timeout? I will say that the Eagles, their offensive line is absolutely amazing. I thought Detroit's was really good too, but they control the clock as good as anybody I can see right now. But the story to me is, how do you go from the number 2 pick in the draft and get this guy Jaden Daniels to where you're playing for an NFC championship in 1 year? What an amazing turnaround for the Commanders. I still want to call them the Redskins. All of us would great. We'll get in political correctness trouble for that. But basically, the organization itself, what a thrill it is for that part of town to have a great team again. I mean, literally a great team. They have really turned it around. So very impressed with the Commanders.
Yeah, by the way, there's a lot of Native American.
All hail the mighty Redskins.
You know what? And there's a lot. Apparently, there's a fair amount of quote Native American, which to me doesn't really make any sense because nobody's native to America. But anyway, be that as it may, who say they love the name of the Redskins.
Yep.
To me, I also would think it's kind of an affront, but they don't, and that's who cares. That's what matters, really. So it'll be. I just don't see either the Eagles or the Commanders beating either the Bills or the Chiefs myself. So my money's on an American League again. But you get the stuff where it's like you never know with turnovers, right? I mean, Baltimore. I thought Baltimore was at least as good as the Chiefs. I mean, the Bills. But what do they have? 3 turnovers?
Yeah.
I mean, that changes the whole game.
It changes it. Hey, Harper, since we're talking about Super Bowl and tight ends, a good buddy of mine I was texting last night throughout the game was the Ghost, Dave Casper. Did you ever get to know David?
No, I had a financial advisor who knew Dave back when he first started in the insurance business, and what a first of all, a tremendous football player. One of my idols growing up. I wanted to wear his number in high school. And then when you throw in what he's been through from a financial aspect, lost everything pretty much, Patrick, as you know.
Yep.
And for him to rebound the way that he has, I'm just delighted that him and his story, even though it's tragic from a financial aspect, that he's able to turn things around. And, so many of our former players don't know what to do when they're done playing football. And a few, like Mike Webster, was living under a bridge. What a great shame. But Dave's a fantastic person. I'd love to meet him. And
well, actually, it's interesting. Didn't he go in the insurance business?
He did.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
fact, yeah, it's interesting because I get asked every year. They now call it the Joe Morgan Memorial Tournament, but it was the Dave Casper golf tournament. So I get to host the radio tent, and so he's such a quiet guy, But so it was the Dave Casper golf tournament here in California. So it's kind of fun to meet all these guys, and he's very, 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 very nice, quiet guy. Yeah,
He is he is brilliant. I mean, he would change things on the offensive line. He would change blocking schemes just during the game. He and his other linemen. In one game, he was just kind of an athlete. And this wasn't, we had face masks in the early 70s, it wasn't forever ago, but he played tight end, which was his normal position, played offensive tackle, played wide receiver, and played defensive end at different times of the game against USC one year. He also, and now we'll age ourselves, Ed, he knew the whole song of Alice's Restaurant. Arlo Guthrie's 27 minutes. He'd go up during a break in a band at a restaurant or a club, and he would pull out a guitar and he'd do all 27 minutes of Alice's Restaurant. You can get anything you want at Alice's Restaurant, and the coach knew it all. How did you learn that, David? I can't remember the first stanza, But he's
but wasn't it like Dave DeBuscher, right? Memorized the Houston telephone book or something ridiculous? there was some basketball or it was either DeBuscher or Havlicek or something. Just kind of a crazy.
It could have been Lucas because he was an intellectual guy. Jerry Lucas was
Jerry Lucas. That's who it was. Yeah. Someone played the East Coast.
Mike and I would just want to memorize the one girl's phone number that was really pretty. That's all we would care about, but not the whole phone book, right, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I got a sticky question for Patrick Steenburge, who was our guest, along with Harper LaBel. Patrick, who played for the University of Notre Dame, and Harper of Colorado State, the National Football League, the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Patrick, I might get in trouble asking you this question, and you don't have to answer this. But
okay, good.
I'm not going to throw you under the bus. One guy that you took over for was pretty well known, a guy by the name of Joe Theismann.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a stupid question. How well did you know him? What was he like? Because I remember him as being the biggest, quarterback darling around. Remember, he was on the TV shows with his little blonde darling. What was her name? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Remember what was her name?
Kelly, one of those people.
Well, anyways, what was he like? Because Harper has a story that's okay, but I'm just curious. Were you guys friends?
Hey guys, we're gonna go to our next break. When we come back, go ahead and tell that story. Every time I think of Joe Theismann, I think of Lawrence Taylor, though, and that broken leg.
Tough
Crazy.
End to his career.
Oh yeah, reminds me of the Napoleon McCallum with Ken Norton Jr. too. That I'll tell you a quick story about that off air. Which is the highest selling arcade game? Again, we're total random questions here. Which is the highest selling arcade game? Stay with us. Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. One more time, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mike McDowd and our special guest, Patrick Steenburge and Harper LaBel. Second trivia question, which is the highest selling arcade game?
The seconds or first?
Which is the highest selling arcade game?
Can I take a shot at this?
Yeah.
Harper, you want to do it? Go ahead.
No, he wants the highest, and you want to give the number 2. I don't understand why you want to give the number 2.
We're gonna go with Pac-Man.
Yes, Pac-Man. Very good. All right. Okay.
Thank you. I'll be here all week.
Thank you very much.
Patrick says he's got a special trivia question for us. Go ahead, Patrick.
Ties into the Buffalo Bills and Notre Dame. Who was the last Notre Dame player to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft? And about when was it? Think about when was the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. The last national championship was 1988 for Notre Dame. So who was the number 1 pick?
It wasn't Jim Kelly. Yeah, but you said it has to do with Buffalo Bills.
It wasn't the Rocket?
Nope.
It wasn't Jim Kelly.
I said I've won a couple cold drinks on this bet on this
So
little
and
trip.
he played for the Bills.
Played for the Bills.
Thurman
That's who
Thomas?
drafted him. That's who drafted him.
Oh,
Thurman
this-
Thomas? Wait.
No.
You said 1988?
No. That's 88 was our last national championship. It was before 88. Basically, it was you'll
okay.
never get it. The guy played for 5 or 6 years, had a solid year,
Monty
start.
Stickles.
No, sir. Walt Patulski from Syracuse, New York. The number one pick in the NFL draft, defensive end, 6'6". Nobody could run the option on him. He shut down the Texas Wishbone by himself in the Cotton Bowl in 71 and was drafted the number one pick in the NFL draft, Walt Patulski. And it would have been 72 draft, I guess, after the 71 season. But think of it, that's like 53 years ago since Notre Dame had the number one pick in the draft.
And he was, what position was he?
Defensive end.
Oh, defense. Okay. Yeah. Never mind. And I was thinking he would have blocked for OJ back in those days, but he was busy tackling him in training camp.
He was trying to tackle him. Yeah.
Yeah. Because OJ.
And what about?
Did he
Talk about a football name. Well, that's a football name I've ever heard one.
Walt Patulski. And he was a financial investment guy too, out because as you know, everybody had to work real jobs besides playing football back then.
Yeah. Fine Irishman, I'm sure, right? Patulski would have been a great Irishman.
Good man.
Yes, good for him.
Good man.
Yes.
All right. What were you talking about before we went to break?
Oh, I don't know.
Me about Joe
Pat.
T.
Well, what do you? I mean, was he a close teammate of yours, and what was the relationship like?
Yeah, back when I was playing, freshmen weren't eligible. So your freshman year, you just were the prep team, the scout team, basically. And Joe had been the starting quarterback the year before. And my sophomore year, he was a senior. And he was another good trivia. He was one of 3 quarterbacks who were up for the Heisman Trophy that year. And one of them being Archie Manning, Joe Theismann, and the guy who won it was Jim Plunkett. Jim Plunkett. Jim Plunkett from Stanford. But Joe was amazingly. I'd think like sometimes really late on Saturday night, I'd go, man, I'm better than him. I can beat him out, And then I'd watch practice on Monday. We'd be running number 1 offense, number 2 offense against the prep team, And he'd make plays, and I'd go, dang, how did he do that? He had such quick feet, quick release, knew where he was going with the ball. Was very accurate. He was just a really good player. Yeah. And, had a great personality. He believed in his talents, which you got to be if you're going to be especially a leader at a quarterback. And, I've got to meet him over the years. I'd run into him a lot of Super Bowls when I was doing a Super Bowl event. And then I just saw him this past fall at the Stanford game. There's a Newt Rockne Legacy Club. And they gave Joe the award, as the Newt Rockne guy this year. Actually, 100 years after Rockne won the national championship at Notre Dame, 1924, their first ever national championship. So I got to meet Joe, and they asked me to introduce him, which was fun because I could tell a couple quick stories about Joe T. And he's really, he was an incredible announcer for a number of years. Yeah. So he's just a solid guy. I had, and he just wouldn't let me play. It's like I couldn't beat him out. Like, dang, Joe, come on, man.
Yeah.
I think he got to play with the
NFL. Go ahead.
Oh, I said, I think he got to play a little bit with Kathy Lee Crosby. That's who that was, by the way. When they host that show together on TD, I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's nice. But but Harper, you have a connection to Mr. Joe, don't you? I don't know if you can tell it or not.
Well, I was playing with the Bears and we had a fake punt, and our personal protector was a short guy. He was under 6 feet tall, and he was kind of bent down. He had his hands on his knees, kind of like what a tailback would be right before the snap. And I hit him at the top of his helmet. Ball bounces up in the air. This is right about midfield, and needless to say, it was a cluster of bad things that happened. Some buddies of mine called me the next day. Joe was doing that game with ESPN, and what was his name? Paul, the kind of walrus-looking guy that used to play for the Bills, oddly
Oh,
enough.
yeah.
They were just drilling me. And then they come back from the break, and there's a picture of me on the sidelines, and I didn't realize I was on the air. And then Joe gave me another handful of his opinion about, how I was responsible for, the demise of our Western civilization. But so I deserved it, but really, I never watched. I will never watch that game again, just because I don't want to see what Joe had to say about me.
Yeah, but whose fault was it, though? Was it his fault for being that short?
No, there's no fault. It was my fault for snapping it just a little bit too high, and I get it. But the one thing about Joe that was really interesting is that 1971 draft, when Jim Plunkett went first, and Archie Manning and Dan Pastorini and Ken Anderson. I'm trying to think of some of the other quarterbacks that were a part of that. Sports Illustrated did a story on that, and Joe ended up getting drafted by the Dolphins. I think he was a third or a fourth rounder, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. And he ended up not signing with them. He went to Canada for a year or two before he ended up coming back. But long story short is, Joe, where were you when you got the call? Because today everybody, the media, and you've got a green room, and guys are wearing their suits and their ties. Joe was playing basketball on the other side of campus, and somebody had to go get him and have him called back to the Dolphins to accept the announcement. Really. Just a completely different era from the way that it is right now. Plunkett was nowhere to be seen. They didn't have the media access like they do now. So it was a completely different era, as Patrick can attest to, that, getting drafted. And it was a one-day event. Remember, they didn't break it up over 3 days. So very, very busy time, but a completely different realm of how you're introduced into the National Football League than the way they do it now.
Harper, did you get drafted out of Colorado State?
I did, yeah. So very fortunate that that took place, but I didn't make it, Patrick. I was cut, released, let go for 4 years. They drafted me to play center because I could long snap, but I had a tight end body. I was 250 going in a world where in training camp, real quick, I was drafted by Kansas City, oddly enough, and I got up to about 268. That's the heaviest I was. And the next smallest lineman on the team was 285. So needless to say, I was a little shrimpy, wimpy dude that goes into training camp. Didn't stand much of a chance to make the team, but eventually did a few years later.
All right.
And how tall are you, Harper?
6'4". 6'4", yeah.
On a good day.
Right.
That's kind of tough. I mean,
just kidding, Harper.
But being that tall, that's almost an impediment for your quarterback, isn't it?
Well, now they're 6'7". Some guys are even bigger than that. And as Patrick, I'm sure, can attest more than I get, you got to find those little areas in between the long arms that are reaching up to deflect your passes and your guys, and where the receivers are down the field and the linebackers. It really does make it different. And that's why a lot of your quarterbacks you see today are all 6'4", 6'6". They're just they're bigger human beings because they have to rely on their ability to be able to see down the field. That makes Baker Mayfield look like a little shrimpy guy. He's about 6'1.5".
And to add to Harper's resume, at Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks, California, sunny Southern California. Hello, Dodger fans. Anyways, Harper was a star football player, star basketball player, star baseball player, and a star trackster as well. So four sports, you bring all those together, and well, that must have been a heck of an asset for your football game, because you already were an excellent athlete. Harper, how did all those other sports help you become such a darn good football player?
Well, even though he probably wasn't the first to say it, if I were to quote Tony Gonzalez, the tight end, who oddly enough, again with Kansas City and then with the Falcons, he put it this way, because he played college basketball at Cal Berkeley.
Yes,
and one day he was asked, tell us a little bit about the other sports that you played. He goes, well, basketball made me a better football player. and football made me a better basketball player. I was a tougher human being on the basketball court because of what football taught me, but yet I was more athletic and I could move around and I could find spots to get open because of my basketball prowess and carrying that over athletically over onto the gridiron. So, Patrick, I'm sure you played more than one sport.
I was just going to ask Patrick.
Yeah, I played basketball and baseball. I'd get done with football on Friday night and go to basketball practice on Monday morning, found out I was in terrible shape. And then I'd start playing baseball. The day after basketball tournament, I'd play baseball, and it was snowing in Erie usually. So we had a lot of stingers. And Harper, I was just going to, you talked about Notre Dame High School, I guess you probably got to know the great coach Kevin Rooney there. Who was there for many years.
My senior year was Kevin's first, actually. His first year of 3 full decades, if not 4. Yeah.
Yeah, an incredible guy. And how I know them in 2012, I did the first event in Ireland, a global Ireland football tournament alongside Notre Dame Navy when they played their opening game of the season in Dublin. And I got Kevin Rooney took Notre Dame High School to Dublin and played against Hamilton High School, a perennial state champion in Arizona, coached by Steve Bellis, a former quarterback at Notre Dame. And it was a great game. And Kevin Rooney's team, Notre Dame High School, kind of upset Hamilton in a wonderful game in Dublin. So I got to know Kevin really well, really enjoyed working with that man and everybody at your high school. It's a classy place.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead, Harper.
No, I was just going to say that's just one of those interesting things that, boy, if you're fortunate enough to play, not at a powerhouse, because that's generally speaking, what everybody kind of classifies it at, but the experience that a high school kid would get to go on a trip like that. My son went to Buford High School here in Atlanta, and they were part of the Kirk Herbstreit tournament where they brought a bunch of teams to Texas to play one another. Just really makes the game bigger. It enhances and allows it to grow and creates memories in these kids that they get to keep for the rest of their lives.
Okay, guys, we have to cut to our last commercial break here. What flower works as a natural pest control? Kind of a tough question. And we do have a quick silly joke here. Okay, so a bus filled with politicians on the campaign trail was driving through the countryside one day. A bus driver caught up in the beautiful scenery, lost control, and crashed into a ditch. A farmer living nearby heard the horrible crash and rushed out to discover the wreckage. Finding the politicians, he buried them. The next day, the police came to the farm to question the man. "So you buried all the politicians?" asked the police officer. "Were they all dead?" The farmer said, "Some said they weren't dead, but you know how politicians can be." All right, stay with us. Sports Econ 101 will be right back with some closing. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mike McDowd and our special guest, Patrick Steenburge and Harper LaBel. Third trivia question, what flower works as a natural pest control? It's a tough one. I'm just going to, I'll give it marigolds. Okay. All right, Harper, what do you want to tell us before we cut out to end the show? You want to plug something?
Oh, well, I hope everybody enjoyed the tournament and that college football hopefully is in safe and sound hands and continues to grow and prosper. And we talk about that. Our show is 100 Yards of Football. Mike has been a guest on that show, and he gave all of his comedic routine before we went on the air. So we had to redo it and take 2. We had to cut all over again. But that's a lot of fun for us, and certainly a way to learn more about the game and the great people that are a part of it.
Great. Thank you. And Patrick?
Yeah, I wasn't up to the quality of Joe Theismann to play football. So I got out of football after my senior year at Notre Dame. It had 5 different careers, blessed with lots of them. And for the last 30 years now, I've run an organization called Global Football, where I organize really their educational tours around the world for high school and small college football teams. We've been to 28 countries on 6 continents. Did the first game ever in Africa with Drake University versus Mexico. And I'm still looking for a couple teams for this coming August 22nd. So if any high school guys out there that still got an open schedule, I've got the NFL Academy the UK is going to play again. And so I'm just going around the world doing football with great young men and coaches.
Okay, what website can they go to?
Globalfootball.com. Pretty simple.
Globalfootball.com. All right, you guys ready? Here's our thoughts of the day. So I'm starting meetings at my house for people with OCD. I don't have it. I'm just hoping they'll take one look at my house and start cleaning. And my therapist says I have preoccupation with revenge. We'll see about that. All right, tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and asking more trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, military.
Oh.